Good afternoon, everybody. It's Lorraine Alternative Homesteading. It's November 24, 2023. I wanted to give you an update on that coyote. What was really interesting about that coyote is it was on the property when we all woke up. It made its way into, I'm going to call it a barn. It's an outbuilding that's open. It's like a barn that has straw in it, straw bales and stuff like that. It was not aggressive. And the guineas alerted me to it. They surrounded it, cackling, and that's what they do with perpetrators, and criminals are on the property or other animals. So, but the coyote didn't do anything. It just sat there, curled up in a ball like like it was a dog, like a dog that was going to sleep. So it was really unusual behavior for a coyote, especially since I went out there. I was making a lot of noise. I was yelling at it. I was banging things to get it to leave. And each time I did that, it didn't pick up and leave. It actually picked up from being in the sun, let's say, to the back wall, hiding. So this is not normal coyote behavior. This is not even normal dog behavior, If the coyote were hungry, it would have attacked any one of those birds, but it was not aggressive at all. It just looked like it wanted to sleep. It wanted to hang out. It didn't want to be bothered. It looked a little young. It was a little thin. At first, I thought it was a shepherd, but then when I saw the tail and the face up close and stuff, I knew it was a coyote. But it was not aggressive. It was alone. And even after I scared it off and it went up the hill, it came back to the same location, and it was just sleeping in the sun on the straw bale. And the guinea surrounded it again, alerted me to it, and it wouldn't leave. It was just hiding. It's like it wanted to sleep. It wanted to hang out there. Maybe it was not feeling well. It was definitely female. I don't know if she was pregnant. It didn't look big to me. I don't know if somebody dumped it on the property. That's always a likelihood. With these criminals, they have dumped other kinds of animals on the property, and why not a coyote? Easy enough to trap, wild animals around here and let them loose somewhere. But this animal was not acting normally. It was totally non-aggressive. It was acting literally like a dog. The way a dog would when it wants to curl up and go to sleep and, hang out in the bed. But it wasn't hungry. It wasn't looking to eat anything. It wasn't looking to attack anything. So I was at a loss of what to do. So I was going to walk back in my house, and then my mail guy shows up in his car, and he pulls down my driveway. As soon as he got halfway down the driveway, the coyote gets up and walks quickly to the front gate and walks down the county road, going towards my neighbor's house. But I didn't hear my neighbor's dogs barking or anything to say hey, we've got an intruder here, we've got a coyote here. I would imagine that people that own dogs that are outside that would see a coyote would bark, would bark and alert their owner that there's a coyote here. But I didn't hear that. But I go back into the house and stuff, and, after the mail person left, I was so glad because he must have scared the coyote, with his vehicle, and he left, and I don't think it came back. But later, around noon, a little after noon, I did hear my neighbor, firing some shots. Not unusual, people around here do target practice and stuff like that, but not usually at that time of the morning. So I'm just wondering if maybe the coyote stepped over there. I mean, it was not normal behavior. It was so non-aggressive, and it was hiding, it was scared. Almost when you a dog has done something wrong, and the owner will go "What did you do?" And the dog sits there and puts its head down and sticks its tail between its legs. It's sort of like what this coyote was doing, although the tail was not between the legs. It was just, it wanted to curl up in the straw where the sun was, and that was it. And then when I was banging, making noise and stuff, it just ran to the back and hid. It wanted to just hide and go to sleep. So that was just not normal. So I don't think it's here now. I don't know what happened to it, but It doesn't belong here, and I hope that if it wasn't feeling well, that it was taken out of its misery, because you don't want a sick animal running around. But it's been really weird. I would imagine like a lot of the animals' behavior has been unusual because we have not had a lot of rain. And when we don't have a lot of rain, that means that a lot of stuff that the animals normally eat in the forest is not growing. In addition, a lot of them didn't have enough water to drink. Like my stream around my property was bone dry. So I usually have little fish, little frogs, you know, a tortoise or two, you know, those little crawdaddies and stuff. And when it dried up, there was nothing like that. So, like, even the possums, like, I've got possums that go down to the water. You can see them, like, scurrying down to the water to drink. There's nothing there for them to drink, so they're coming closer to the house. And, like, they're, like, on my porch every night drinking from the cat dish and stuff like that. So, you know, this is what happens when Mother Nature is being messed with. The animals, the wild animals, come closer to home. So, anyway, I hope that the situation is resolved. But I'm going to continue reading for now. Global Thuggery, Insights on Control by Terror, Torture, Targeting American Citizens by Corkin Cherubini. I'm glad you enjoyed it. And see, the next chapter, he's got a play on words here. This next chapter 9 is Perpetration Nation. Perps and foremans and stuff, so. Perpetration Nation. They're here right now, ready to torture and ruin millions of us. Perps, quote unquote, informers, mercenaries, the true enemies of humanity and America. The official number of perps was around, oh my goodness, 100,000 some time ago, according to my research. Another article suggested the number would soon grow to 100 million perp informers. 100 million was close to my estimates in 2016, and the numbers increase daily. No one will tell the truth about this covert matter, if the truth is even known. What's so bad about perping? So, what's so bad about people perping? Don't they just annoy and irritate the victim? Maybe join in on a noise program or street theater? The answer is a resounding no. They do much more, enough to fill volumes of TI targeted individual testimony. Many perps have access to covert computer torture programs designed to assault the target with radio frequencies that create distress and disease in the target's body. Some days, seemingly hundreds of these perpetrators apply different types of physical and mental torture to their victim. Perps, quote unquote, know they will never be touched for their actions. After all, if prisoners of war can be illegally tortured with no consequences to the torturers, why should the perps worry about being punished for terrorizing and torturing U.S. citizens in their homes and cars, on the streets and highways, or anywhere? Perps have the numbers. They have the knowledge. They're building bombs, setting fires, ruining computers and the electronic systems of automobiles and other devices. The list could go on indefinitely. And they have the incentive: money, drugs, expensive gifts, shortened prison terms, and other perks. Perp numbers on the highways seem preposterous. We all know what a military convoy looks like going down a major highway. Maybe 50 or 100 vehicles, lights on and identically spaced. Perp convoys are similar, lighted, spaced, but colorful compared to the drab green or sand-colored military vehicles. Perp numbers might easily exceed the populations of the small town or village the targeted individual is closest to. Oh, great. Good to know. What type of future is in store for society when almost half of its citizens could be enlisted by covert operators to engage in illegal, often deadly criminal activities? Interestingly, someone who is likely a well-paid perp, rationalized that at least many young people and even some of the minorities were obtaining a few small rewards for their dirty work. Does anyone else see horribly twisted situational irony here? The only available job in town now being criminal harassment or assault, all for a little gas money, or for a few drugs, a pat on the back, or a new vehicle, courtesy of our coverts. 2. That message is sent to our young and older citizens. It's okay to vandalize, terrorize, torture, and destroy as long as it's under orders from, quote unquote, the company. Coverts know, as does every one of our lawmakers, what type of tragic setup is being offered to less affluent citizens. After a few years of perping, will these people ever be decent citizens, even if their strongest desire is to become decent? There were the Milgram studies. Terrorizing and torturing others is inhuman, especially when murder, framed as suicide, heart attack, accident, or disease, is the ultimate consequence. As the huge body of Milgram studies, well as multitudes of historical data tell us, a large majority of humans will torture other humans when told to do so by an authoritative source. Other evidence suggests that participation in or living in a society that endorses torture produces an acceptance of such inhumanity. In fact, for many, inflicting pain and torture as well as death is indeed addictive. Keyword, addictive. The danger is obvious. How can members of such a society ever return to a state of loving, nurturing, accepting, and caring about fellow humans after years or decades of complicitly administering pain, suffering, and worse to victimized humans? Chapter 10. Endemic. If we scrutinize American history, it should be clearly obvious that our country has been characterized by an ever-present predisposition or obsession with war, violence, mass murder or assassination, physical torture, and psyops, medical and weapons experimentation on non-consensual human subjects, and the development of secret projects and programs like MKUltra or quote-unquote gang stalking to carry out these obsessions. Throughout our nation's history, much of the killing has been glorified by professional propagandists. Mass media has made violence and unaliving living room entertainment. Youngsters actively pursue simulated unaliving via their video games, a pastime that often continues into adulthood. For those who join the military or a violent gang, the desire to unalive or torture an enemy, whether real or perceived, too often becomes ingrained in their psyches. Since our society seems to glorify violence, is it any wonder that our minds have become desensitized to the pain and suffering of others? Is it any wonder that violence often seems to be our first means of solving perceived threats? We can only conclude that we have been set up. America's predisposition to violence, torture, and murder is endemic. E-N-D-E-M-I-C. Chapter 11. Torture. As long as I can remember, I have been hearing and reading about cases of torture and cruelty to animals. You hear that, guys? Animals. Thankfully, we have animal advocacy and animal rights groups like the SPCA, PETA, and many others. They have rescued animals from horrid conditions and have helped pass and enforce laws against animal torture. Until lately, I haven't read or thought about human torture too much. There was that minuscule back-page article on the LSD and radiation experiments, but we just assumed that these were rare interludes of folly in an otherwise sane world. Then they were the news of Gitmo, followed by the revelation that our own CIA had secret prison torture chambers around the world. The more one reads, the more one realizes that for demented minds, there is more sadistic joy in torturing humans than animals. What is most confounding is that despite numerous humanitarian organizations, animal rights support groups are looking much more humane than the so-called humanitarians. Still doubtful about the extent of torture in America? Web search. Gang stalking. Chapter 12. Pathologicals. As long as a COINTELPRO type gang stalking program exists in America, the use of torture, terror, harassment, vandalism, and murder of often our best citizens will continue. While the torture aspect, both physical and psychological, is most debilitating to the targeted individual, TI, it is quite rewarding to a pathological mind that craves seeing other human beings suffer. Gang, quote-unquote, stalking torture has only one purpose: hurting innocent people. There is no interrogation, nor is there any reason for the gang stalking torture other than pure enjoyment for very sick minds as they watch the victims suffer day and night with no hope for escape. Many TIs voice that they have been targeted for no discernible reason. The TI realizes that torturers can at any point increase the pain factor until he or she realizes a point of irrationality or insanity. Some TIs commit suicide as an escape from the mental and physical pain they must contend with every hour of every day. Every torture victim is fully aware that the integrity of his or her body and mind is rapidly being destroyed. The psychological operations, PSYOPs, that accompany the physical assaults not only increase the target's anxiety and sense of terror, but may even traumatize the victim. That's right, folks. It's all about trauma-based mind control and satanic ritual abuse. Even if the physical and mental assaults were to cease entirely, it is doubtful the victim would ever totally recover from the effects. Nor are we so naive to think that an individual has to be covertly targeted in order to experience terror. Torture, slow, fast kill, often referred to in COINTELPRO type organized gang stalking literature. Pointedly, anyone institutionalized, socially or economically compromised, artistically active, wealthy, middle class, or humanity-oriented is at risk in a culture that allows and promotes terror and torture of their citizens. What he's saying is this can happen to anyone, for any reason. Therefore, as long as we fail to raise our voices protesting the existence of such pathological program and demanding that those responsible for such inhumanity will be fully punished, we may as well count ourselves complicit with those who flagrantly torture their fellow humans. Chapter 13. Other writers' comments. I have well over 150 writers' books on my working shelf, just inches from my work table. So in the following pages, I will be excerpting pages from books by two of my favorite writers, Dr. Ronnie Lena Kildee and William Blum, B-L-U-M. Dr. Kildee was chief medical officer in Finland, as well as a long-term targeted individual. She died of cancer, which is attributed to the torture she endured as a TI. I will be quoting from Dr. Hilde's Bright Light on Black Shadows, Chapter 18, Instruction Manual for Community Gang Stalkers, which, by the way, I have already posted on my YouTube channel over the summer. So if you look back about between 3 and 6 months ago, just type in Kildee instruction manual, you'll find it. William Blum is a well-known journalist and author whose work has struck fear into the hearts of U.S. government imperialists, according to a blurb about the author in his book, Killing Hope. Quotes from Blum will be from Chapter 4, excerpts from the U.S. Army and CIA training manuals, entitled Rogue State. Dr. Kildee says, every target will have at least one CBA, which is a community-based agent, watching them at all times, even while at home asleep. Doesn't that make you feel warm and cozy, folks? What a sicko. You know, back in the day, they were called peeping toms. We have peeping tom laws, by the way. W. Bloom says, from the section Freedom Fighters Manual in 1984, pull down power cables, cut down trees over highway, false alarms of fire and crimes, short circuit electricity, and threaten supervisors. Dr. Kildee says, the ultimate vehicle intercept is the staged accident. Bloom says, from Psychological Operations in Guerrilla Warfare 1984, it is possible to neutralize carefully selected and planned targets such as court judges, police and state security officials, etc. Dr. Kildee says, physical sabotage. Sabotage is very important is that it lets the target know that they are totally hopeless to stop it. Bloom says, psychological operations, if possible, professional criminals will be hired to carry out specific selected quote-unquote jobs. Oh, so they hire professional criminals. Nice. Bloom says, kidnap all officials or agents of the government. This is a psychological operation. Then Kildee says, physical sabotage, unlocking the target's front or back door and leaving it ajar while the target is away. Kildee says, sabotaging the target's reputation. The people listed can be given information. Store staffs, targets, landlords, neighbors, city employees, family members, co-workers, friends, supervisors, casual social contacts, and especially personnel at places the target applies for work. Bloom says, and this is from the section CIA, a study of assassination in the early 1950s, for secret assassinations, the contrived accident is most effective technique. So that's setting somebody up with a fake accident, an accident that would not have normally occurred if it weren't instigated. Kildee says, trade and service related. Repair tradespeople can keep, quote unquote, getting it wrong. Medical lab techs can substitute blood samples. Police frequently pull the target over for frivolous reasons, or they can wound or kill the target's pet. Yep. Sanitation workers can leave trash in the target's yard. Oh, is that how it's getting there? Oh, okay. Many thanks to both Dr. Kildee and William Bloom for showing us what our governments are engaged in doing to their citizens. This brief list from CIA and CBA training manuals suggests assault is, of course, a minute sampling of the kinds of inhumane activities being recommended by just two covert, semi-covert forces. There's much more. Chapter 3 of Bloom's work is entitled Assassinations. Chapter 5 is entitled Torture. Far too much information for this short essay. Finally, most every TI knows of Dr. Ronnie Kildee and that she was tortured for decades before her early death from cancer. We will miss her and the good work she did for humanity. A near ditto for William Bloom, who passed away only a few months prior to this writing. While Bloom does not state that he was a TI, he strongly implies in the About the Author section of Rogue State that much of his life has been compromised because of his political views were out of sync with those of the status quo. It seems rare anymore to hear of people sacrificing their well-being and lives so that humanity can have freedom and fairness for all. Chapter 14. Hyperbole or not? Writer-researcher Fritz Springmeier spent years studying the effects of mind control on humans. In one media interview, he agreed that many forms of media can be mind control agents, as can electronic chemical devices. However, he said the electrochemical devices are 1,000 times more powerful. 1,000 times more powerful? Only months later, I read another news interview noting Fritz had added another zero to his estimate. 10,000 times more powerful. Not 1,000. He added another zero, 10,000. Most of us can readily discern how conventional media can easily steer the masses in any direction. So something 10,000 as powerful should concern us. All of us. But there's more. Just weeks or months after seeing the 10,000 estimate, Fritz adds another 2 zeros, saying that the electrochemical mind control is 1 million times more powerful. 1 million. By now, even the most gullible of us must be wondering about discrepancies. Why is he continually increasing the numbers? Is Fritz becoming a bit forgetful? No. We know that exaggeration can heighten the effect of a statement. In case of mind control forces, what we need to understand is that Fritz has worked with people who are being unconventionally mind controlled, and that the sheer power of electrochemical mind control is immeasurably greater than what TV can do. Control, and although in the hands of a few, TV can have devastating power, yet a descriptor like immeasurably tells us very little, other than we cannot begin to estimate the true difference. So, writers sometimes employ hyperbole. There's no intent to deceive here. They just want to get an important message to the masses. If we understood the extent of the electronic mind control technology used on opponents in the first Gulf War, we might more easily understand why Fritz kept changing the numbers. Chapter 15, The Bull. Delgado's bull. Remember, you know that guy, Delgado, who likes to control the beef, wears the beef? A quarter ton of beef snorting and pawing the ground, but a few electrodes to its brain transform bullishness to obedience. The same with humans. All humans. No electrodes, no chips now. Just dust. Nanoparticle dust. Like the garbage they spread all throughout my house and chicken coops. Perhaps from a chemtrail, or the HVAC, or a street sweeper. Targeted individuals ingesting thousands of nanoparticles, particles refitting their psyches from that of a bull to that of a mouse, obediently following the maze constructed to contain their every move. Chapter 16, MK, Nowhere to Run. Writers and philosophers from other ages who wrote about political prisoners being tortured and starved in dark dungeons would inevitably present the more positive side of such a scenario. At least they still have integrity of their own minds, quote unquote. Unfortunately, the integrity of one's mind has dwindled drastically during the last few decades. Experiments upon innocent citizens, mostly Jewish political prisoners during World War II, marked a turning point for, quote unquote, scientists who sought the secret of controlling the human mind. Project Paperclip imported many of these scientists, who began working with the American scientists interested in this field. Soon, America's own agencies were delving into methods of mind control and later mind reading, or remote neural monitoring, i.e. reading a person's thoughts remotely. Projects like MKUltra and COINTELPRO were classified in the 50s and 60s, so the public did not hear about those programs in their high school or college history classes. Control minds, control the masses. That's a quote by Jim Keith. Delgado's power over the charging bull should have been a warning to all of mankind. His research for methods of control over humans was largely unpublished, thus ignored by most of us. But there were those of us who saw the potential for controlling society. Their research and experiments were shrouded in secrecy. Only after discovering almost 7 years ago, let me turn the page, that I'm a targeted individual, did I discover an entire body of literature relating to mind control. I am not referring to the mind control forced upon us by teachers or parents or politicians or even by devious media. Rather, I refer to the chemical drug and electronic methods far more powerful than traditional methods. And these newer chemical and electronic methods of mental control are generally carried out covertly so that the victim is many times more vulnerable. When we do not realize we are mind control victims, we inevitably believe that our decisions are our own. After all, throughout our lives, haven't we trusted and depended on our mind's ability to help us survive? That is why it seems inconceivable that powerful microwaves, often used in conjunction with chemicals and drugs, such as BZ, that's benzodiazepines, or LSD, can command our minds just as Delgado commanded the charging bull. Writers and researchers on the subject include doctors Nick Begich, Ronnie Kildee, Robert Duncan, John Hall, Max Williams, and Barry Trower, as well as a former businessman Magnus Olsson, a Swedish mind control researcher who received an implant without his knowledge during an operation, and too many others to list here. Okay, now I want to tell you, I had given the suggestion to go to look out for Charlie's YouTube channel and listen to the 1995 recent post. It was Nick Begich that was being interviewed about, the musical device in Alaska that creates radio waves. And Max Williams, actually, I'm on his mailing list, and he provided me a testimony that's on my website under what's called our possibilities, or something like that. Technological mind control weaponry and its deployment is so extensive and complex that only a small percentage of individuals can comprehend its potential for evil. Too often the public is told about the potential for good that such technology offers, if indeed they're told anything at all. For instance, the drug administered to... Oh, don't get me started on this, folks. The drug administered daily to hyperactive school children for better concentration is touted as positive without considering the long-range effects that too often lead to a myriad of health problems. As Dr. Nick Begich tells us, laws and guidelines for the use of such mind control technology are mostly non-existent. Why? Because the mind controllers do not want the truth about mind control techniques to be transparent or recognized as valid. Until controls are fully in place and enforced, RNM, which is mind reading, and other mind control techniques may have no positive aspects whatsoever. Some writers have already noted that RNM marks the end of anyone's intellectual property, unless, of course, that person is a controller, and even then, what is so horrifying is that the very integrity of our minds has vanished so quickly without our suspecting it. A roundtable discussion by quote-unquote free thinkers, pun intended, could certainly raise dozens of other serious issues, including the legal aspects. What if an unwitting victim of covert programming for a misdeed does carry out some heinous act? Just what agencies, offices, and departments are to be presumed guilty? Well, we all know that that's happening, folks, right? Myron May, all the active shooters, like every one of them, their brains have been hijacked. Certainly, non-consensual victims of heavy electronic chemical programming should not be held accountable for actions that they were programmed to perform. That's exactly right. Yet they are inevitably the ones punished for the deeds. Dr. Barry Trower elaborates on this misuse of technology. What we often do not know about are the unknown individuals who have been deliberately marginalized since early childhood so they can eventually be programmed to perform some unconscionable acts. Still, if we know or even suspect that we are victims, a large body of empirical evidence indicates that victims may take at least some proactive measures to resist the control and lessen its effect. Chapter 17, Unwitting Victims. There's a reason that a huge majority of our population is confused, ignorant, and fearful. They may be unwitting victims of a massive plan for their own destruction, a destruction that, ironically, they have paid for and even supported. Many say that the secret covert plan began when Harry Truman created the covert agency called Central Intelligence. He did so even after criticizing the existence of my favorite Bureau of Investigation, which he saw as a potentially too powerful, dark, and covert force. My rooster agrees. Rather quickly, he said that he regretted allowing the creation of the CIA. Sadly, he did nothing about dissolving the agency either. Neither did a string of presidents from the 1950s to this day, except for President, guess who? John F. Kennedy. Even by 1963, the covert forces had reached a position of power that exceeded that of a president and an entire Congress. At that point, any hope for freedom and democracy perished. The power of these agencies grew at an astonishing rate, and dark, covert programs were continually funded, almost without question. Very secret, often illegal projects like MKUltra and COINTELPRO became responsible for innumerable, shockingly inhumane experiments and actions. Their total secrecy kept the public ignorant of what was happening to fellow citizens. Indeed, the public is still mostly ignorant of what occurred as a result of such questionable programs. Today's no different. The average American citizen has little, if any, knowledge of what our covert agencies are framing. And even if they did, would they be willing to do anything constructive to curtail or even dissolve groups that are unrestricted in creating havoc in the lives of innocent Americans? Let's see how much more we've got here. I'm going to end on that because chapter 18 is a little bit longer than a couple of pages. So we'll pick up at a later date. I hope you enjoyed my continued reading of Global Thuggery. Here you go, folks. Let's see. Global Thuggery Insights on Control by Terror, Torture, Targeting American Citizens by Corkin Cherubini. Isn't that nice? The criminals did that to the corner of my book. They like to do stuff like that. Probably because they don't know how to read their own selves. Pisses them off. Yeah. But anyway, I'm going to sign off for now. I hope everybody's having a good day, Friday. And well, they want it to be a secret. But too many people are speaking out now, and people are waking up. So please spread the word. Please hit the thumbs up to get the message out there. Lately, as soon as I post a video, it's totally downvoted to like 50 or 60%. So if you can hit the thumbs up and even leave a comment like thank you, or a smiley face or whatever, just to engage conversation, actually boosts up the algorithm and the percentage so that the message gets out there. Feel free to share it. And welcome newcomers, welcome everybody to my channel. My name is Lorraine. I am a targeted person from Manalapan, New Jersey, a home I lived in for 30 years as original owner. And yes, The Manalapan Police Department was on my butt all the time. They were following me, stalking me. Yeah, they would follow me to the bagel store. The same police officer would follow me to the bagel store. And then they would just show up at my house. And then they literally kidnapped me from my home after I reported a crime. So, you know, when the FBI says if you see something, say something, if you're a targeted person, that doesn't include you. I'll leave you on that note. I'm going to sign off for now.